On CNN, Bernie Sanders was asked if America would ever go socialist.
This is the president. America will never be a socialist country.
Will
that hold true if you're elected president?
If I am elected president, we will have a nation in which all people have health care as a right, whether Trump likes it or not. We are going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of at least $15 an hour. And whether Trump likes it or not, when I talk about human rights, you know what that also means? It means that our kids and grandchildren have the human right to grow up in a planet that is healthy and habitable.
Clap, clap, clap. All right, it's the golden rule of socialism. When asked about how it works, focus on the ends and skip the means. Because in the end, we all want free stuff. Healthcare, school, cheeseburgers. Free anything is awesome, especially if you believe that free anything actually exists. It doesn't. Take the tuition-free joke. More than 8 million student borrowers have defaulted on their federal loans for higher education. Why is that? Thanks to all that free and easy money from the loans. There's no incentive for colleges to cut admission costs and no reason not to go to college. Education costs tripled, debt exploded. Now the streets are paved with English majors. College administrations ballooned because the loans inflated the tuition. It looked like it was free, but now you're broke, which means you can't buy cars, goods, or a home because you're busy paying off Uncle Sam. That's how you kill industries. That's socialism. It's a drag on the economy, and it's a drag on you. Still, so many think that if you vote socialist, all your debts are forgiven. If students are debt-free, then colleges must be cost-free. Free buildings, free books, free beer, free you, free me. Socialism's talent is getting people like Sanders to lie about free. Because who doesn't want a free life? Capitalism, it's such a drag. Like gravity, it's a downer. But if America's slow death is boring, then let's just skip to the finish line, to Venezuela, where Maduro detained a reporter for showing video of people eating from a garbage truck. Oh, look, free food. In a socialist paradise, that's what you call a Bernie burger. Welcome back, Dana. See, I wrote that down there. Welcome back, Dana.
You have to write that down?
Yes, I forgot.
You just couldn't speak it from your heart?
I always think that if somebody's away, that's the first person you should go to.
Oh, that's an interesting theory.
Yes, it is. I want to talk to you about this poll because you like polls.
I like polls and charts.
Let's put this poll up here. This poll is very depressing.
Yes.
56% of registered voters between 18 to 24 favor mostly socialist economic models.
Yep.
48% of voters between 25 to 34 said the same thing. That's scary and sad. Do you care to comment on that?
Well, then the 55 and older are like, no, we don't want any of that. And I think that's partly, we've talked before about having to teach the lesson over and over again about our system and why it works. And the other thing is that it shows just that you have to take it seriously. Because one of the things I'll say about the group between 18 and 34, that they saw the financial crisis their parents went through. Maybe their parents lost their job, or maybe they were graduating around the time of the financial crisis. So the job market was tough. And so, unfortunately, the other thing that you see is that, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, this is just a fact. You know, people who will say, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal.
Right.
And you think that there's a lot of those people. If you look on a graph, it's actually not true. The most amount of people are in the socially conservative, fiscally liberal camp.
Oh, I don't like those people.
Well, a lot of those people are watching.
I'm kidding.
But there's a theory that government can do it better. And one thing I would say about the free college thing, and it just shows a real lack of innovation. If you look at somebody like former governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, he's now the president of Purdue University. They knew that they had a problem with school tuition. It was going up. So how did they figure out? They didn't just decide to give it away for free. They figured out a way to work with employers so that employers that think they want to hire you in your junior, when you're a junior, they think they want to hire you, they start paying you then, so that they help defray the cost of tuition so that you will then have a job going through, and it's worked really well. But that's an innovative way to do things.
That's exactly right. That's actually a solution that helps deal with a promise.
Right.
But what we see from Bernie and the left generally, Jesse, is just the promises.
Right. Well, it's typical liberalism. You create a problem and then you swoop in and try to fix it.
I'm going to go surface. I'm not going to talk polls or facts. I'm looking at Bernie Sanders here, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy's lost his fastball. He seemed rusty to me. His cadence was plodding. Da-da-da-da-da-da. He seemed boring. The audience was not electrified. I caught some of this last night, unfortunately. And I have to say something, and it's just brutally honest. He is not good looking enough to be president of the United States.
Wait a minute.
In the television age, Bernie Sanders,
This is great.
Everybody knows it, and I'll say it, he is not good looking enough to be the president. When you have a president, you're inviting them into your home for 4 years. You want to be able to look at them. They have to be telegenic. You have to be comfortable with them. Bernie Sanders is just not handsome enough to be the commander-in-chief.
I predict within 3 minutes, you're going to get a text from your mother. And your mother is going to make you apologize to Bernie Sanders.
That could be happening any moment. But I will say, no, if we want to talk about the pie in the sky and the deal, the Green New Deal that he's pushing, they just ran the numbers on this thing.
90.
Unbelievable, nearly $100 trillion over 10 years. And guess how you pay for it, Juan? The only way you can pay for the Green New Deal is if you raise everyone's taxes making over $30,000 a year to 100%. Everybody in America can't make more than $30,000. That's the only way you can pay for this stuff. And he doesn't have a plan besides taxing everybody. Donald Trump does. He wants to grow the middle class. And you look at the news right now, you have Jeep now announcing a new plant in Detroit, 6,300 new jobs created, good-paying jobs, with billions more invested in that great city, and I think the proof is in the pudding.
The proof's in the pudding, Juan.
Yeah, I guess that Harley saw the proof. That's why they left. You know, my thinking on this is most Americans agree with Bernie. I mean, that's what...
That's scary, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's,
Then
no,
you
no,
should
it's not
nominate
scary.
him, Juan. Make him your nominee.
No, but I'm just saying, you know, you guys talk about socialism like it's the end of the world, like people who are Americans who love capitalism, love our society, don't understand what Bernie's talking about. Democratic socialism, it doesn't mean that the government takes over the means of production or there's no more private property. What it means is that you have protection so that people can, for example, retire with dignity, so that people have security in living in life.
I'm not retiring with dignity.
Right, but here's the
way.
thing. You know, when Bernie was asked, well, how do you pay for it? Because I think that's your question. I think that was the heart of it. He said something very interesting. He said, Amazon, how much taxes do they pay? It's the biggest company. Answer, they're not paying state, they pay state and local, but they don't pay federal taxes. And then you look back at the record.
They pay federal payroll taxes.
Right, they don't pay federal taxes like we're talking about on income.
See, the solution's always taxes.
So,
Morgan.
and then you think about other big companies like GE or some of the airline
What happens
companies,
if they fail? What happens if
Boeing,
those companies go bankrupt?
they don't pay taxes.
kill the
Yet at this table, they say, oh, you know what? This is social. Maybe it's, how about the Trump tax cut?
Juan,
Not
Amazon's not paying any taxes in New York because the socialists chased them out of New York.
Morgan,
Yeah.
I want to get Morgan in here. It seems to me the solution for everything is taxation, not creation.
Yeah. Why didn't you think of this before now, Brett?
I don't know. It just dawned on me.
You know, listen, we could have a whole debate over the economic philosophy over this. It is shocking
let's
to
do
me,
it.
these numbers on the polls. But I think, you know, what I see going on in the Democrat Party right now, to me, there's more sophistication from a policy perspective on like a college president election than there is in this party. I mean, the sort of free stuff that they're advocating, they might as well be advocating for the cheeseburgers that you brought up earlier. But I know, actually, cheeseburger sounds good right now.
Yeah, if you created a garbage truck and called them Bernie burgers, it would go great.
It probably
I
would.
would.
Yeah.
But listen, Bernie raised $10 million from almost 360,000 donors, 5.9 million in one day. The establishment Democrat Party in 2020 is acting exactly like the establishment Republican Party in 2016, in which they said there's no way it could ever be Trump. This isn't going to happen. When you look at the polls, when you look at the money, when you look at the energy, I think it's completely behind Bernie. And this time they can't rig the primary against him like they did in
Did
16.
Bernie have a real job before becoming a politician?
He wrote erotic fiction.
Okay.
You know what I wanted to say, though? I mean, Dana was saying this thing about the young people, the numbers, and how the young people are more apt to say yes to socialism than the seniors. And I think to myself, boy, that's ironic, isn't it? The seniors get Social Security, Medicare, VA benefits.
Seniors,
They also
Juan.
fought
Oh,
wars that
is that right?
50 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
They're
think
not
those
seniors.
people are the older folks. And guess what? They're the ones who say no, but they're the ones that are benefiting from socialistic.
They're the successful
dollars.
They also
people that
ended
know what
socialism
life
in a
is
few
about.
wars. All right, President Trump predicting a very tremendous summit with Kim Jong-un. We'll see what happens. The latest from Vietnam next.
Set for the second nuclear summit between President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The two leaders both arriving in Vietnam and are expected to have dinner before high-stakes meetings this week. President Trump stressing the ultimate goal is the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And Greg, here's the thing about people being impatient about diplomacy. When you look back to the summits that Reagan had with Gorbachev,
Right,
like in a history book, that's on one page.
right.
But it took years to get done. So this is not like seamless where you dial it up and the diplomacy results.
That is
come
a
in
good
immediately.
analogy.
Oh, I didn't even ask permission.
Yeah, you know, what?
I didn't ask permission,
Permission
to
to
use
make
an
an analogy?
Oh, no. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm sorry.
No, I said I didn't ask permission to use an analogy.
Oh, permission
And we-
granted.
Thank you.
Permission granted. Okay, they keep using the same old argument, which is we're obviously conceding something. All the jokes in the media are Trump is going to give away the farm and all that stuff. What are we conceding? When you are just having a conversation. If you believe having a conversation is a concession, then you are, by definition, the world's most homicidal hawk. Because if you can't have a dialogue, then all you can have is war and death. Because there are ugly, rotten people on this planet that you got to talk to. And if you remove the dialogue, you got nothing. The other narrative is that Trump's just out for positive media. So if the positive outcome is a dramatic reduction in nuclear threat, but you don't like that,
Yeah.
because it's positive for Trump, you're a loser. It's got to suck to be in the media and be the bad guy in the movie, like to be the bystander rooting for the guy that's supposed to beat the Karate Kid. You know, you're the person in the movie that's rooting on the bad person. You're rooting against Rocky, essentially. And even if there's good news, it hurts you because that means the person you don't like won. How petty and destructive.
Morgan,
I like how you have compared Trump to Rocky, and you compared Trump to Reagan. This segment is off to a great start.
Read your mom's
is that
text.
what you think I did?
Oh, yes, and my mom actually did text, and she said one word, Jesse, vacuous.
In all caps.
All caps.
It was in all caps. Morgan, let me ask you about this question because Greg brings it up. There's this skepticism, and you even see it that unnamed White House sources are saying that Steve Biegun, who is the envoy, is going to give too much away, as if President Trump doesn't know what's happening and they're going to pull the wool over his eyes. I had someone on the Daily Briefing that thinks that's not true and not the case, and I know you were just at the Munich Security Conference.
Even
I'm
if there's
curious
good
if any of
news,
this
it
came
hurts
up.
you because
We weren't
that
really
means
talking about
the
North
person you
Korea
don't
at
like
the security
won.
conference. The conversation was on China, which is really for the first time that had happened because it had been on Russia and everything else. So I think what's really fascinating is the pivot to Asia that President Obama talked about that he wanted to do for so many years. We've really now seen that come full force in American foreign policy because we are simultaneously negotiating with one of the world's nuclear powers, North Korea, while we're negotiating with the Chinese. So it's just like from my like nerdy geopolitical perspective, it's one of the most fascinating times in history. I think what we've seen is that the status quo as it relates to North Korea was untenable. What President Trump when he came into office. And so I totally 1000% concur with your point about diplomacy taking time. I don't think that we're going to get some sort of huge expectations out of the summit, but it's about building trust. It's about building a relationship to get some of these key wins. I think that's the path we're headed on.
Juan, do you have a historical perspective on that? Because you were working, I think, at the Washington Post at the time during trying to end the Cold War.
Sure, but I mean, so the big difference there is obviously Reagan and Gorbachev and then George H.W. Bush. But the difference is that you had a sense of what Americans were willing to give and do to get something from Gorbachev. And here, we just don't know. And I think that's what opens the door to people saying, oh, so we're going to end the war? You know, are we going to say the Korean War is over? Are we going to say...
I think we may. I think that's
well, that's
possible.
okay. So that, see, but we don't know.
But is that okay?
We are going to... No, it wouldn't be okay because that then has ramifications, Dana. For example, does that mean that we pull back military? Do we pull back our military? We have like 28,000 people right there. So what does it mean? What does it mean if we say, oh, we're going to put diplomatic liaison office in North Korea. Again, we don't know. And Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, and others are saying, well, we're not sure. We just want to have a conversation. Wait a second. Why are we giving this guy, Kim Jong-un, who is a global threat, such an amazing platform, time with the President of the United States, at a time when the President is hungry for a victory? The question is, what are we doing?
You are so rooting for failure. You put it this way, you go like, how can we talk to this man? That's the only way you can do it, is talking to them. And number two, hungry for a victory. Be happy he gets the victory.
So Gina Haspel at CIA, Dan Coates, Director of National Intelligence, whose job apparently
they're
is
the bad cops,
for saying something. Oh, if being honest now means that you're being a nattering nabob of negativism. Oh, my God.
But the intelligence
Jesse
community
hasn't had a chance to talk, and we have not.
I just think he's hungry for a victory for the American people, and that's peace. That's what he's hungry for, peace, Juan.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can talk all the trash you want. I found very interesting that the biggest news so far out of this summit, which hasn't even happened yet, is that Kim booted all the press out of their hotels. And the press is angry, Dana.
I would
The press
be too.
has never been more angry. Now they finally realize that Kim is worse than Trump. Trump would never kick these people out of the hotel.
That's true. So
He'd let them stay.
There's like a benefit to it. It would be a bummer to get kicked out of your hotel because he was unhappy.
Oh, it's happened to me many times.
You have to repack your bags?
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot of packing, by the way.
You know,
all right, we got to go. Democrats
hang
trying
on
to.
a second, Dana. Don't you think the funniest sight, though, but the press
Megan's gonna yell at
was
me.
Hannity on a motorcycle going through Hanoi?
We have to go. Okay, because Democrats are trying to block President Trump's emergency declaration. The latest battle over the border wall next.
He wasn't wearing a helmet.
Hill, where House Democrats are trying to stop President Trump from building his border wall. Lawmakers will be voting soon on a resolution to block Trump's national emergency declaration. The president says he will veto it if it clears both chambers of Congress. Nancy Pelosi claiming the move to resist Trump is all about patriotism.
This isn't about the border. This is about the Constitution of the United States. This is not about politics. It's not about partisanship. It's about patriotism. We would be delinquent in our duties if we did not resist, we did not fight back to overturn the president's declaration.
Well, in my opinion, protecting the sovereignty of the country is patriotic, Nancy, but it's neither here nor there. We're on a first-name basis.
Your mom.
So Nancy Pelosi actually supported President Obama's executive authority to do DACA, which was, people are making a similar comparison. Does should we charge her with hypocrisy?
You could a little bit, though I think there is a distinction here, and that is the money.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Juan. I think as Republicans, I don't think there's any disagreement that the president is right, absolutely right on needing strong border security. But I do think that the way the Constitution is written is that the Congress does the money, and you can't just go around and say, well, I need a national emergency. And I could see why there are some Republicans like Tom Tillis who have said, just based on principle, I'm going to have to vote against the president on this one, not because he doesn't think border security is critical, not because he didn't actually come on shows and talk about how important it was. It's just not the same type of national security emergency, because on DACA, for as wrong as that was, I think, for going around the Congress, it wasn't actually asking for money. It was just changing the policy.
True. I think a lot of people say, Juan, fairly, you know, President Bush explored his executive authority when it came to surveillance and things like that after 9/11. Obama explored his executive powers on immigration. This is just President Trump trying to expand or explore the limits of his executive authority.
No,
and he'll be checked by courts or Congress.
Well, in fact, I think that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, will make that argument to fellow Republicans to try to hold Republicans in line, to say, listen, this doesn't matter. It's going to be decided in the courts. So why would we, antagonize either the president or divide our ranks here on Capitol Hill? Yep. But what you see is that Republicans are saying on the Capitol Hill, not the Trumpian popular, because the popular support is there for Trump in terms of his base, but in terms of Republicans on Capitol Hill, they're saying, you know what? So you get a Democrat, and the Democrats declare national emergency over guns or over climate change, et cetera, and we don't want this precedent, including Mitch McConnell. So you get people who are saying there's real consequences to his behavior. It's extra constitutional. As Dana was saying, You are literally saying to Congress, who has budget authority, I'm going around you.
That would be scary if a Democratic president declared a national emergency on guns, Morgan, and started taking people's weapons. That would be a revolution.
That'd be an emergency.
That would be an emergency. That's a real emergency.
It would be a war.
Yeah, I can understand where the administration gets frustrated with congressional Republicans here, because they seem to be more worried about the constitutionality of his actions and actually getting him the wall in the first place, similar to repealing and replacing Obamacare. You know, Lindsey Graham just tweeted right before we came on the show that Vice President Pence said today that in 2014, Obama declared a national emergency for 120,000 minors that were interdicted at the border. We've had 120,000 or over that already in just this fiscal year. So you can argue whether it's a humanitarian crisis, whether it's a national emergency, but Democrats, as the senator pointed out, have spent billions of dollars working on the crisis at the border. But what's happened here is anything that Trump is for, that they're against. Trump is for capitalism, we're for socialism. Trump is for free democracy in Venezuela, we're for a dictator, we're for Maduro. You know, we just heard earlier, you know, as it relates to North Korea, Trump is trying to have peace, potentially peace deal in North Korea. We're suddenly become war hawks and supporting a more aggressive stance with North Korea. So it's just opposite day.
No, I think people just don't want us to get run over, Morgan. People don't want to, just because Trump's ego says, I need a win, don't
Are you
want
talking about North Korea?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Here's the
thing, Morgan. You have 58 former national security officials
Well,
say
who
yesterday.
are all for President Obama or never Trump?
No, but they're saying there is no emergency. I mean, at this moment, do we see a caravan running over? No.
That's a great point, because just 3 months ago, all those Democrats were screaming about a humanitarian crisis because there were caravans running over. Then, like a few months later, 2 dead children, and they're like, don't worry about the 2 dead kids. We don't care about the caravans because we don't have the visual anymore. We don't have the visual. So once Trump is talking about a humanitarian crisis, it doesn't matter to them. They don't even, these are the people that were screaming about a process who then don't give a damn about 2 dead kids.
Yeah, but
because they no longer serve. No, they didn't. You laughed when I brought it up.
I got to say this. You know what? There was supposed to be a caravan filled with people who were diseased, filled with terrorists.
2 died.
MS-13.
2 died, Juan.
It never happened.
I mean?
And when it doesn't happen,
just proved my point.
When it doesn't
died.
happen,
and you don't care now. You don't care, Juan. No crisis.
You know what?
Crisis.
And there was
shouting and rhetoric is not going to carry
that's
the day.
a fact.
That's why you get 61.
You ran out of your crisis.
No, because 61.
Why don't you let me finish,
it's
Juan?
not me.
Yes,
Greg.
it is.
It's
You are the one that
61.
shouted crisis, and then you stopped shouting it when it was not politically viable.
I think there's only one person shouting at the table, but 61%.
All right, I'm declaring a national emergency on the 5.
61%
we are shutting
of us.
one
No national
down.
emergency.
All right.
Trump. That is not exactly the sign of a healthy democracy. Democracy hangs on the idea that whoever gets the most votes wins.
We might want to take a look at the whole electoral college, in which case is seating a man for president who did not get the most votes.
So I think it needs to be eliminated. I'd like to see us move beyond it, yes.
Colorado now set to join 11 other states and Washington, D.C. to bypass the Electoral College. The plan calls for the popular vote to determine the winner of national elections. The idea still needs more support to become fully, effective, but it's gaining momentum. So you get a situation, Jesse, where people look at it and they say, gosh, it's no longer one man, one vote if, in fact, the Electoral College is carrying the day. What do you think?
If I ran into the Electoral College at a bar, I'd buy the Electoral College a drink, and then I would grab the Electoral College by the face, and I would plant a big, fat, wet kiss on the Electoral College's mouth, because without the Electoral College, we would have President Gore and President Hillary Clinton. So it's probably my favorite part of this republic. Republic. That's what we are, Juan. Not a democracy, not mob rule, a republic. I think the framers had it right. And, for people in Wyoming, I think it's also very important.
By the way, didn't Trump, though, say he'd rather have a popular vote?
He could have campaigned in California and cleaned up.
I see. So, Morgan, you get a situation where people say, hey, you know what? The Electoral College was set up to appease the slaveholding states in the South. And so what we have now is a modern situation where you have the concentration of populations on the coast. And you get a state like Wyoming, gets 2 senators for 500,000 people. California, 33 million people, they also get just 2 senators.
Are you saying the Electoral College is racist?
I knew it.
I didn't say it was racist. I said it was
Standing O to Juan, he made it into a race argument.
No, but there are people who believe that. And
I know.
Jared Stepman of the Heritage Foundation, I had him on one day to talk about this because I am from Wyoming and Colorado.
Racist.
And I think that this is terrible. If you go to Jared Stepman's page, he'll explain that whole thing to you. The founding fathers said, okay, that these states are going to have the rights that others have. That's how it was set up. And the thing is, just because as our country grew, more people decided to move to California than to Wyoming, doesn't mean that people should just get to choose to change the Constitution without actually having to go through a process in a constitutional convention. And why would Colorado, I'm just asking you guys honestly, I know the new governor is going to sign this bill. Why would you give away your power as a state? Why would you do that? What if there's like major election fraud in North Carolina, for example? Are you going to tie your vote to North Carolina if there's major election fraud? Like, why would you do this? I think it's a terrible idea.
Well, so the counter argument would be that it distorts and gives disproportionate power to a very small group of people.
Well, I should let somebody else comment.
Well, no, you go ahead.
Oh, well, this is nothing more than just people being unable to accept the outcome of election. Full stop. That's what it is. It's about red states versus blue states, and it's also about small states versus big states, states that aren't as populated. So if you can't win the Electoral College, the next thing to do is to try to change the laws or change the Constitution so you can win the next time. I have a better idea. How about just win an election by campaigning via the Electoral College? Yeah. Go to Wisconsin, go to Michigan, go to places that you didn't want to show up to because you took them for advantage and win an election the old-fashioned way. I think if we want to change the Constitution, the process, as Dana just laid out, is a constitutional amendment, not these silly state laws because bitter liberals can't accept it.
And I hope someone challenges them and takes them to court because I think they'll lose and this will be the end of it.
But I think it's an anachronistic law, and you certainly have seen changes like allowing women to vote. That's the change, right?
No, but it's essentially big states versus it's bullying. You want to bully the small states. Yeah. But I'm for it. You know what else we should do? We should look at football, change it so that the team with the most yards, not points. And no, don't even score the game at all. Just see how many people show up at the game, and those who have the most people at the game win, and then you don't even have to have the game, or you can have the game but don't score, but it has nothing to do with excellence or competence, just who shows up. That is, it is. It's because they lost.
Oh, yeah? And so for governors and for in states now, we should change the law so it's no longer who gets the most votes.
I just think it's great that you're for voter suppression.
I'm not. I'm for sense and logic, and I can see you're opposed to that.
Oh, yes.
All right. We're going to be right back, and we're going to have a look at those 200 passengers who were stranded on a train since Sunday. What the heck happened? Terrible. The details next, right here on The Five.
Nightmare. Nearly 200 passengers stuck on an Amtrak train for almost 2 days. This is my nightmare. It all happened when their train headed from Seattle to Los Angeles hit a fallen tree on the tracks, stranding everyone on board for over 36 hours. Rescuers weren't able to reach them because of the deep snow. Video shows people sleeping, playing games, and even playing musical instruments to pass the time. The train is now back at the station in Eugene, Oregon, but it took hours because they could only move at 2 miles per hour. Thankfully, no one was injured. Juan, you and I are Amtrak warriors. We're on multiple times a week. This really freaks me out. I think I'm gonna have a nightmare about it. What would you do if this happened to you?
Well, I think it would be, you eat. Hopefully the cell phone you brought a charger with you so you can talk to people and tell them how miserable you are. But I just think, the reality here is, to me, why don't they let people off? So the Amtrak said no.
Because of the snow.
Well, it's not only the snow. They said it was dangerous. They didn't know what wires might be exposed. Trees were down. But I just want some personal freedom, Morgan. I just like to move about, and they don't seem to care. Airplanes are the worst. I'm telling you, you get stuck on a tarmac, they will not take you back to the gate. They will not give you your personal freedom. At least Amtrak gave these folks free food. The
true.
airlines don't do that.
So, Greg, it sat for hours, and then after it finally started moving, it was only like 2 miles per hour. I feel like you might have actually gone insane if that happened.
Yeah, I'm not one of the, in movies where there are guys that are heroes and then there are guys that have to be slapped by the hero. I'm the guy that they slap. It's like, come to your senses, man.
Get a hold of yourself.
You've got to help your wife here. And it's like, So I'm that person. This is why you always bring snacks, some booze, and some medication. The question is, do you share? And this is a bad time, I maintain, to be a noisy eater. All right? Because you don't want people to know you got a bag of Doritos or you're traveling with
Starts
something.
crinkling and all the eyes go to you.
Yeah, immediately you're like a wanted man. So you got to make sure that you have soft foods. Tasty foods, but soft foods. You don't want to have any food with a recognizable odor, Dana, like fish. You don't want to bring sardines. You don't want to have crunchy food like lobster.
Wait, let me make a list.
Yeah, you got to have some. You got to have maybe some baby food in jars, and you can scoop it up. Peanut butter is good, but you don't, because the thing is,
I travel with peanut butter.
Every summer when my parents, we would drive to Lake Tahoe, my dad would tell me the story of the Donner Party, because you'd always go through Donner Pass, right? It's very interesting. When they ate each other, they like cut each other up and put each other in packages and then mix the packages up so you didn't know who you were eating.
You mean like if I covered Jesse with ketchup?
But you would never know it was Jesse, because let's say Jesse's the one we eat. But you cut them all up, and then you put them in packaging with, let's say, one of the cameramen, so you don't know if you're eating Jesse or the cameraman.
No, I would know, because Jesse'd be crunchy.
No, you just find a lot of red meat.
Oh, there we go.
I can't believe we're talking about eating our co-hosts.
Yeah. We're all eating you, dude.
Could I quote Scott Adams?
Yes.
I would like to quote Scott Adams. So there was a there was a tweet that he did the other day that it caught my eye and it made me laugh so hard. At Donner Pass, there was a huge snowstorm and all of these cars were stuck. And they couldn't go anywhere. And he tweeted, "I hope they brought a lot of sandwiches." I thought it was so funny.
Donner Party was the story that every kid grew up with, and if you went to Lake Tahoe, they told you that story every time you had to go through Donner Pass, because it's a horror. If you've never heard the story, you've got.
Never.
You don't know the story?
I'm from Florida.
It's a great
I grew
book.
up on the beach.
What's the book?
I don't remember the title, but it's a great book. I read the book, and I didn't grow up in the West Coast.
They didn't anticipate how long it was going to take to get from A to B across the country, and then a snowstorm hit, and then they all kept journals, and they ate each other.
That's
not for a while. They didn't eat. It took them a while to get to eating each other.
Yeah, but then one of the survivors opened a restaurant.
So, Jesse, I thought the segment could have gone a lot of places.
Yes.
I didn't think we'd be eating each other by the end of it. The Amtrak VP said that refunds and other compensation would be provided. What do you think should be in that compensation package?
Just a lot of cash, straight cash. That's all they need. It's the difference between the East Coast and the West Coast. On the West Coast, when a train gets stranded, they play guitar and they give each other massages.
Ukulele.
If this happens in Jersey or New York, they're going to be knives being stuck in other passengers. Also, what I would do, I would buy the bar car. I'd buy the whole bar car out, and then I'd wait a few days when people got really hungry.